Rachel's voice cut through the speaker like a dull knife. Mum Laura has zero claim on this property after everything she's pulled. She shows up when it's convenient and disappears the rest of the time. She'll turn the whole thing into a crying fit if she finds out before we sign. You know how she loves making everything about her feelings. I've already got the paperwork ready with Attorney Hale. We do this quiet, we do it this weekend, and it's done. No more guilt trips, no more drama. Just back me up for once. She's been freeloading off the family story long enough. Sign it, and we can finally move on without her dragging us down. Hi, my name is Laura Bennett. I am 30 years old. I stood in the narrow kitchen of my rental house on the edge of Willow Creek, Missouri, staring at my phone on the counter. The voice memo app had been running the entire time. I had opened it to leave myself a quick note about swapping shifts at the clinic next week, but I must have set the phone down without stopping the recording. Instead, it had caught every word of the conversation my older sister Rachel was having with my mother in the living room 15 feet away. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grab the edge of the sink. For years, I had been the one quietly fixing things on the old family acreage whenever I had a free afternoon, replacing fence posts, hauling feed, paying the back taxes out of my own checks when no one else would. Rachel had been rewriting that history in real time, turning me into the selfish one who never showed up. And my mother was listening. I felt the floor tilt under me for a second, the way it does when you realize the ground you've been standing on was never actually solid. This wasn't new resentment. This was something they had been building together for a long time, piece by piece, until the version of me that existed in their heads had nothing to do with the person I actually was. If you've ever overheard your own family rewriting your entire place in their story so they could push you out of it, relate if this sounds familiar. I stopped the recording with shaking fingers and slipped the phone into my scrub pocket. My shift at the Willow Creek Community Clinic started in 40 minutes. I still had to finish making lunch, but the thought of eating made my throat close. Instead, I stood there listening to the low murmur of their voices continuing in the next room, Rachel's tone getting smoother, more persuasive, the way it always did when she wanted something. The next morning, Friday before Labor Day weekend, I drove out to the old property anyway. I told myself I just needed to check the fence line before the holiday traffic picked up. But really, I needed to see if any of what Rachel said had a shred of truth in it. The house sat quiet under the late summer sun, the porch boards creaking under my boots the way they always had. I walked the perimeter like I had 100 times before, fixing a loose wire here, stacking stray branches there. Every small task felt like proof I was still part of this place, even if they were already writing me out of it. I was kneeling by the back shed when my phone buzzed. An email notification from Rachel. My chest tightened. She almost never emailed me directly. I opened it without thinking. The subject line read, "Signed docs for transfer. Review before we send to Hale." Attached was a PDF of a quitclaim deed with my mother's signature already on it and a blank line waiting for mine. The body of the email was short and businesslike. Mum signed. "Just need you to sign too so we can get this filed before the holiday. Don't make this harder than it has to be." She had sent it to me by mistake. I read the email 3 times, the words blurring. She hadn't even bothered to hide what they were doing. She had just assumed I would roll over and sign away the only piece of family history that had ever felt like mine. My hands went cold around the phone. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, fast and unsteady. I forwarded the email to myself from a different account, then deleted the original so she wouldn't know I had seen it. Then I sat on the old wooden steps of the shed and tried to breathe. The air smelled like dry grass and diesel from the neighbour's tractor down the road. Everything looked the same as it always had, but nothing felt the same. That afternoon, I got another text from Rachel, this one sweet and fake casual, "Hey Mom, wants us all out at the property Sunday for a quick family photo thing before the holiday. Just us. Wear something nice, don't be late." I didn't answer. I drove back to town, changed into my scrubs, and went to work like the floor hadn't just dropped out from under me. But every time I walked into a patient room, I kept seeing Rachel's email in my head. Every time a coworker asked if I was okay, I smiled and said I was fine, because what else do you say when your own sister has decided you don't deserve a voice in your own family? By the time my shift ended at 11 that night, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to sign anything, I wasn't going to stay quiet. But I also wasn't going to explode. I was going to find the truth first, whatever pieces of it were still left to find. Sunday morning, I woke up early and drove back out to the property before anyone else arrived. The house was still dark. I let myself in with the spare key I had kept since I was 16 and went straight to the attic. I don't know what I was looking for. Proof, maybe. Something that proved I hadn't imagined all the years I had spent showing up when no one else would. In the far corner behind a stack of old photo albums, I found a small metal box I had never seen before. The lid was rusted shut. I pried it open with a screwdriver from the toolbox downstairs. Inside was a single sheet of yellow legal paper, folded twice, covered in my grandmother's tight, slanted handwriting. The note was dated 3 years before she passed. It said the property was meant for both of her granddaughters, equally because both of them had loved it in their own ways. She had written that she hoped we would figure out how to share it without tearing each other apart. At the bottom, she had added one more line: Laura always fixed what broke. Don't let anyone tell you different. My throat closed. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Then I heard car doors slamming outside. Rachel's voice carried up the stairs, bright and loud. "Mum, the light is perfect right now. Let's get the photos done before it gets too hot." I stayed in the attic for another minute, my hand pressed against the note in my pocket. My heart was racing, but my mind felt strangely clear. They were about to take family photos to celebrate a transfer that had already been signed behind my back. And I was holding the one piece of paper that could blow the whole thing apart. I took the stairs slowly, the old wood groaning under my boots. When I stepped into the living room, Rachel turned around with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Laura, you made it. Good. We were just about to start without you." My mother stood by the window, clutching her purse like a shield. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at both of them and felt something shift inside me, quiet but final. The ground was still tilting, but I was done pretending I didn't feel it. I stepped into the living room and set my jacket on the back of a chair without saying anything at first. The old couch cushions were already pulled forward for the photos my older sister had planned, and a tripod stood crooked near the window where the light hit best. My mother hovered by the mantel, rearranging the same 2 framed pictures over and over, like the placement would somehow make the afternoon feel normal. Rachel turned with that tight smile she used when she wanted control. "There you are. We were starting to think you bailed again. Mum's been waiting. Let's get this done quick so we can all get back to our real lives." She positioned me on the far left of the group shot, then stepped back to check the frame on her phone. "Laura, scoot over a little more. You're always crowding the center like you're the main character here. Some of us actually kept this place standing while you were at the clinic." The jab landed clean. I stayed where I was and kept my voice even. "I got your email this morning, the one with the quit claim deed already signed by Mum. You sent it to the wrong person." Rachel's smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened. "That was a draft. You weren't supposed to see it yet. Mum and I were going to talk to you after the photos like adults. But since you're already making it a thing, fine. We're transferring the property into my name, so decisions stop getting stalled by people who only show up when there's something to gain." My mother glanced between us, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "Rachel, maybe we should slow down. Laura's been helping with the taxes these last 2 years. I didn't tell you because she makes everything about her sacrifices." Rachel cut in her tone, turning syrupy and sharp at the same time. "Mum, you always do this. You let her guilt you into thinking she's the only one who cares. I've been the one handling the real problems while she plays nurse for strangers and pretends she's too busy for family." I pulled the folded yellow paper from my jacket pocket and held it out. "Grandma left this. It says the place was meant for both of us. She wrote it 3 years before she died. I found it in the attic this morning." Rachel stared at the note like it had personally insulted her. She snatched it from my hand before I could stop her, scanned the lines, and let out a short, ugly laugh. "This is pathetic. You probably wrote it yourself last night. Grandma never said anything like that to me. She knew I was the one who actually stayed." My mother's face went pale. She reached for the note, but Rachel held it higher. For a second, the only sound was the old clock on the mantel ticking too loud. Then my mother's voice cracked. "I saw that note years ago. I put it back because I didn't want to deal with the fighting. Rachel, you told me Laura wouldn't care about the land anyway." The words hung there. My older sister's expression shifted from controlled to something wilder, like the ground under her own story had just moved. She crumpled the paper halfway and shoved it into her back pocket. "It doesn't matter what some old note says. Mum already signed the transfer. The lawyer's on her way to witness it so we can file before the holiday ends. You can either sign too and keep some dignity, or you can fight it and look exactly like the selfish one everyone already thinks you are." I felt the anger rise hot in my chest, but I didn't raise my voice. I'm not signing anything that cuts me out of what Grandma wanted, and I'm not pretending this is still a family conversation when you've already gone behind my back with paperwork. Rachel stepped closer, her voice dropping into that low, reasonable tone she used when she wanted to sound like the only adult in the room. "You've always been like this, dramatic, making Mom choose sides. If you really cared about this place, you would have moved back here years ago instead of hiding in town with your little job. But you didn't. So don't act shocked now that the people who actually did the work are deciding what happens next." My mother looked like she might cry or bolt. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said in a rush, "Laura, maybe if you just signed, we could all move past this. Rachel's right that fighting will only make it worse for everyone." Before I could answer, there was a knock at the front door. Rachel's face lit up with something close to triumph. "That's Susan Hale. I asked her to stop by so we could get the witness signature done today. Perfect timing." She opened the door before anyone else could move. Attorney Susan Hale stepped inside, wearing a crisp navy blazer and carrying a leather folder. She glanced around the room, taking in the tripod, the tense faces, and the half-crumpled note still sticking out of Rachel's pocket. "Looks like I arrived at an interesting moment," Hale said calmly. "Rachel told me this was a straightforward family transfer. Is that still the case?" Rachel turned to her with a bright, brittle smile. "It is. Mom signed already. Laura was just about to add her signature so we can wrap this up before the long weekend. Right, Laura?" All three of them looked at me. My mother's eyes were pleading. Rachel's were daring me to explode in front of the lawyer. Hale waited professional and neutral, like she had seen this kind of scene before. I kept my hands loose at my sides and my voice steady. "No, I'm not signing, and before anyone files anything, there's something the rest of you need to see." I reached for my phone, opened the forwarded copy of the mistaken email, and held the screen toward Hale. "This came to me by accident yesterday. It shows the transfer was already in motion without telling me, and this note from my grandmother says something different than what my sister is claiming." Hale took the phone, read the email quickly, then glanced at the crumpled paper Rachel still hadn't let go of. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. My older sister's breathing had gone shallow. My mother had backed up until she was pressed against the mantel. Hale looked up from the phone. "This changes the timeline considerably. If there's a prior document expressing different intentions, any filing could be challenged. I strongly suggest no one signs or records anything until we sort out the full picture." Rachel's face flushed dark. She turned on me with the kind of smile that wasn't a smile at all. "You just had to make this ugly in front of everyone. Congratulations. Now Mum gets to watch you destroy what little family we had left because you couldn't handle not being in charge." She stepped toward me, voice rising. "You think that note changes anything? Fine. Let's burn it right now and see how far your little rebellion gets you when the deed is already in process. Or better yet, let's call the whole family and let them hear how you're the one who showed up at the last second to ruin everything we worked for." My mother made a small broken sound. Attorney Hale stayed silent watching. Outside, a car door slammed, probably the neighbour George Ellis coming over, because he'd heard the raised voices carrying across the yard the way sound always did out here. I looked at my older sister, at the crumpled note in her hand, at my mother's shaking shoulders, and at the lawyer who had just walked into the middle of it. The ground was still moving, but I wasn't falling anymore. I was standing exactly where I had decided to stand. Rachel opened her mouth again, ready to keep going, when her own phone started ringing on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. She glanced at it, and for the first time all afternoon the colour drained from her face. She answered on speaker without meaning to, or maybe she was too rattled to notice. A man's voice came through loud enough for all of us to hear. "Rachel, it's Mark from the realty office. I ran the comps on the acreage like you asked. If you're serious about listing it fast after the transfer, we can move quick, but the title search is already flagging some old restrictions. You might want to hold off on any big announcements until we clear that up." The room went completely still. Rachel stared at the phone like it had betrayed her. My mother's head snapped up. Attorney Hale's eyebrows lifted slightly, and I felt something cold and clear settle into place inside me. My older sister had already been planning to sell the property the second she got her name on it. The realtor's voice crackled through the speakerphone, and everything in the room seemed to freeze at once. Rachel's hand shot out to end the call, but she was too slow. Mark Sullivan kept talking, unaware that half the family and a lawyer were listening. "Rachel, the buyer I mentioned, is already asking questions about the family situation. Small towns talk fast. If there's any dispute over the title he's going to walk. You told me this was clean. I need to know what I'm walking into here." Rachel finally managed to hang up. Her face had gone blotchy red. She spun toward me, voice shaking with the kind of fury that only comes when someone's perfect plan collapses in front of witnesses. "You did this on purpose. You forwarded that email to yourself, and now you're standing here acting like the victim while you blow up the only chance this family had to move forward. Mum signed because she was tired of you dragging your feet for years, and now you drag some old piece of paper out of the attic like it changes anything." My mother's voice came out small and cracked. "Rachel, stop. That note is real." I put it away because I didn't want the fighting, but Evelyn wrote it. She wanted both of you to have a say. The name Evelyn Bennett hung in the air, my grandmother's name written in her own hand on the yellow paper Rachel still clutched like she could make it disappear. Attorney Susan Hale stepped forward and held out her hand for the note and my phone. "I'm going to need copies of everything," Hale said, her tone professional but firm. Conflicting documents, a prior expression of intent, and now a potential buyer who was never disclosed. This is no longer a simple family transfer. It's a contested matter. Rachel laughed, a sharp, unstable sound. "Contested by who, Laura, who never lived here, never fixed a thing, and only shows up when there's money or land involved? Ask anyone in this town who actually took care of this place." It wasn't her. Before I could answer, there was another knock at the door. George Ellis, our neighbour from down the road, stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. He had heard the shouting, the way sound carries across these fields. "Everything all right over here?" he asked, looking straight at my mother. "Diane, you look like you've seen a ghost." "And Rachel, I heard enough from the yard to know this isn't just a photo session." My older sister tried to wave him off. "This is family business, George. You don't need to." George cut her off, his voice calm but steady. "Your grandmother Evelyn told me years ago she wanted both girls to have a piece of this land. She said Laura was the one who showed up with tools when the fence broke, and Rachel was the one who talked about selling it the second she could. I figured you all would work it out. Sounds like you're not." Rachel's control finally cracked. She turned on me with words that came out fast and vicious, the kind she had probably rehearsed in her head for months. "You think you're so noble, Laura. You think showing up with that note makes you the good daughter. You left this town the second you could and only came back when it suited you. Mum and I have been dealing with everything while you played hero at the clinic. And now you want half because you found one piece of paper you're just like every other person who waits until the work is done and then demands a share. The words hit hard, but I didn't let them knock me off balance. I kept my voice quiet and clear. I have the tax receipts from the last 3 years in my glove box. I have photos of the repairs I did when you said you were too busy. And I have this note. I'm not asking for half of something I didn't help build. I'm asking for what Grandma put in writing. My mother started to cry, then not loud, just quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I let Rachel handle everything because it was easier. She said you wouldn't fight. She said you didn't care. I should have asked you myself. Before anyone could respond, the front door opened again. My cousin Jessica Lane walked in carrying a small bag of groceries like she had been invited for a normal family afternoon. Rachel had apparently asked her to come for the photo session to make everything look united. Jessica stopped in the doorway, taking in the lawyer, the neighbor, the crumpled note, and my mother's tears. "What the hell is going on?" Rachel said. This was just pictures. Rachel tried one last time to regain control. "Jessica, this doesn't concern you. Laura's decided to turn a simple paperwork thing into a family war. You can leave if you want." Jessica looked at me, then at the note in Hale's hand, then back at Rachel. "It concerns me if you're trying to cut my cousin out of something Grandma wanted both of you to have. I remember her saying exactly that at Thanksgiving 4 years ago. You were the one who changed the subject every time it came up." The room tilted again, but this time the weight was shifting away from Rachel. Attorney Hale cleared her throat. "Given the conflicting documents and the third-party witness statements, I cannot in good conscience proceed with any filing today. I will need time to review the full chain of title and the note. In the meantime, I recommend no one takes any action that could be seen as self-dealing. That includes contacting buyers or attempting to record anything." Rachel's breathing had gone ragged. She looked around the room at her mother, who wouldn't meet her eyes at George Ellis, who had just confirmed years of quiet help I had given at Jessica, who had heard the truth at Hale, who now held the evidence, and something in her seemed to break. She grabbed her keys off the table. "Fine, you all want to side with her. Go ahead, but when this place falls apart because no one can agree on anything, don't come crying to me. I'm done trying to save a family that would rather protect the person who abandoned it." She walked out without looking back. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the old picture frames. My mother sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "I didn't know she already had a buyer. She told me it was just to protect the land from being sold off cheap. I believed her because it was easier than fighting with both of you." George Ellis patted her shoulder, once awkward but kind. "Diane, you know where I am if you need to talk to someone who isn't in the middle of this." He nodded at me and Hale, then let himself out. Jessica stayed. She crossed the room and gave me a quick, fierce hug. "Text me later. I'll help however I can. This isn't how family is supposed to work." After she left, Hale turned to me. "Laura, I can represent your interests if you want to pursue this properly. The note plus the witness statements give you a strong position. But it will take time, and it will probably mean the end of any easy relationship with your sister or your mother." I looked at my mother, who was still staring at the floor. Then I looked at the note in Hale's hand, the one piece of paper that had survived years of being hidden. "I want what Grandma intended," I said. "Equal say. Equal protection for the land. If that means working with you to make it legal, then that's what I'll do, but I won't be doing it in secret meetings or under pressure." My mother finally looked up. Her voice was small. "Laura, I'm sorry. I should have talked to you first. I didn't have an answer that would fix what had already broken. I just nodded once and walked out onto the porch. The afternoon light was starting to slant long across the fields. Amanda Torres, my friend from the clinic, pulled up in her old sedan 5 minutes later. I had texted her one line while everyone was arguing inside. Things exploded at the property. "Can you come get me if I need to leave fast?" She got out of the car without asking questions and stood beside me while I told her the short version. When I finished, she said, "You did the right thing by not signing. And you don't have to figure out the legal stuff alone. I'll drive you to Hale's office whenever you need. I stayed at the property that night. My mother left with Jessica. Rachel didn't come back. The house felt quieter than it had in years, but not empty. It felt like it finally belonged to the people who were willing to protect it instead of sell it. Over the next few weeks, the story moved through town the way small-town stories always do. George Ellis mentioned the argument to his brother at the feed store. Someone at the realty office heard Mark Sullivan talking about the buyer who walked. People who had known my grandmother started asking quiet questions about why Rachel had been in such a rush to transfer everything. Her reputation didn't explode in one dramatic scene. It just slowly eroded every time someone realized she had tried to cut me out and sell the land my grandmother had loved. Attorney Hale filed the necessary paperwork to pause any transfer. The title search confirmed what the realtor had hinted at. There were old restrictions tied to the original deed that required agreement from both granddaughters for any sale. The note from Evelyn Bennett wasn't just sentimental, it aligned with legal language that had been there all along. Rachel's plan to move fast had run straight into the very protections she had tried to bypass. I didn't get everything overnight. The process took months of meetings and signed documents, but I ended up with my name on the title alongside my mother's, exactly as my grandmother had wanted. Rachel received a smaller settlement after she finally agreed to mediation rather than drag everything through court. She moved to a bigger town 2 counties over and stopped coming to family events. My mother and I speak now, but only about practical things, and only when I initiate. The easy automatic closeness we used to pretend existed is gone, and I don't try to bring it back. Amanda helped me fix the back porch the first weekend after the title was settled. We worked in comfortable silence most of the afternoon. When we finished, she handed me a cold drink and said, "You look lighter than I've seen you in years." She was right. The weight I had carried, the constant low-grade fear that I was the problem, that I was selfish for wanting a voice, was gone. I had spent years staying quiet because I thought silence kept the peace. All it had done was let other people rewrite my story until even I started to doubt the parts I had lived. I still work at the clinic. I still drive out to the property on my days off to walk the fence lines and check the old shed. Sometimes my mother joins me for an hour. We don't talk about Rachel. We talk about what needs fixing next. That's enough. The lesson I keep coming back to is simple and hard at the same time. Staying silent when someone is actively rewriting your place in your own life doesn't protect anyone except the person doing the rewriting. Speaking up even when it breaks the version of family you were told to protect is the only way to stop being erased. I lost the easy version of my family that day on the porch. What I gained was the right to stand on land that my grandmother had meant for both of us without having to apologize for existing. Thank you for listening to my story. If your family has ever tried to rewrite your history so they could take what was supposed to be shared, what would you have done when the truth finally surfaced? Let me know in the comments.